What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen, alongside the associate Kev. It's been a while. Glad to have you back. And today we'll be reviewing AEW Dynamite, which took place January 10th, 2024, in their home headquarters, I guess you could say, right, Kev? In Jacksonville, Florida, AEW
Yep.
Dynamite Homecoming. This was a pretty good show. It was a tribute show. Let's take it back to 5 years ago before we get into this.
Mm.
2019, you were the one who told me about this whole big press conference or rally taking place in Jacksonville. A few of the names I'll mention here: Cody Rhodes, of course, his wife Brandy, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, Britt Baker, Joey Janela, and Penelope Ford when they were still a thing before Kip Sabian took over, and of course Pac and many others. And what an exciting time it was. You know, people could say what they want about AEW then, now,
Yeah.
forever. Realistically, they've done a great job. Obviously, they've had their issues, some very painful growing pains over the course of the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
But what would you say about AEW as a whole from then to now? Maybe positive and maybe, not to be outwardly negative, but a little
Mm.
pessimistic. What could they work on? I'd like to hear what you got to say. Then I'll say something.
Yeah. I'm trying to go back in my mind, even though I don't have the greatest memory. Um, yeah, it was really quite an event. We had just got past, all in, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the end of the summer.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
then I remember, BT, for the most part, it felt like it was kind of on a hiatus. So we didn't know what was going on really. We heard some rumors, but nothing, concrete at the time. And it wasn't until finally we got some news, that one BT episode that like something was going to happen New Year's Day. We get this whole press conference. It was basically the first time we actually got to know the entity of Tony Khan at the
Yeah,
time. No,
that's right.
no one really knew who this guy was,
Mm-hmm.
unless you were in his inner circle. So we finally got to meet this
Inner
billionaire.
circle.
Well,
That's
the
yeah.
son,
That's, see what you did there.
yeah, the son of this billionaire who's also well known to do pretty well in the financial world or whatever. And it was just very interesting. We were finally get something, besides WWE. And it was like really, it was one of those things where you were like really hopeful. Fingers crossed. You're like, this is gonna take us, to the future. This is the future of the industry. To an extent, it is. Like you said,
Yeah.
there have definitely been some setbacks. Um, some that some you could say are preventable, some are not, unfortunately. The following year we got hit with the unexpected thing.
Yeah. Well, that's right.
So
COVID. Yeah.
yeah, so it definitely hurt that company, AEW. It wasn't going to hurt WWE pretty much. You know we were, they were both competing throughout the pandemic.
So this announcement happened January of 2019, right? Exactly, pretty much 5 years to the day.
Yeah.
And the company unto itself didn't actually begin to be televised on TNT October 2nd of 2019. You talk about the pandemic. It wasn't even 5 whole months, right? 5, 6 months where they had to be stuck in Jacksonville, Florida at Daly's place. Not only was this episode called Homecoming because that's their headquarters, this is where they spent the better part of a year and a half, much like WWE did with their Thunderdome. So this really was home to them. So many great moments they had in Jacksonville at Daly's place, which,
Right.
once you finish up with what you have to say, also would love to hear your favorite moment that took place there. It doesn't just have to be during the COVID era necessarily, but
Right.
they've been back there many times before and after that. And so, we'll go over that in just a moment. But again, I think, tip of the cap to AEW hanging in there during such a difficult time. It was very good that Cody was there at that time,
Right.
backstage and in the ring, because I think him and Brandy did more than their fair share to keep things afloat. And honestly, if he wasn't there, I don't know. Well, I know for a fact it wouldn't have went as smooth. But
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows how they would have fared?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head that they were really grinding their teeth, months in. This is literally, the company is a baby. It's an infant. You can't even call it an infant. It's a baby company.
Yeah.
And they're trying to work with what they got. Their limited roster at the time. They were heavily reliant on the friends of the wrestlers who they had hired, who were on the said roster, because you kind of iffy if you're an independent wrestler. You're like, well, I hear about this company in the U.S., but I don't really know anything about them. Maybe I'll give it a shot. You got to see it from that perspective. It's the equivalent of like, oh, I hear about this brand new company. I don't know if I should work for them. Like, what benefits are they going to offer me? So that's how I see it. And it really has worked out for the most part, because I think with the addition of AEW in the wrestling, not just wrestling community for the US, but for the entire world on a international level, I feel like it's pretty much stepped up everyone's game.
Correct.
Yeah. Like we know that, like we mentioned, COVID and everything has, it took everyone like a step back, but at the same time, it elevated the wrestling inside of the ring a lot. And now we're getting to the point where I think we're gonna soon hit a, I don't want to say plateau, but we're soon gonna hit a point where the story levels are finally gonna maybe rival the in-ring abilities.
Yeah,
because we're still working on that with each company, each promotion. We already see that WWE in 2023, like they finally hit the turbo jets, on all brands, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, where
they were
like,
clicking on all cylinders for all their shows. Finally,
we need to step up our game on on all these storylines, because as much fun as we had like watching wrestling pre-pandemic, WWE, it lacked a lot when it came to the storylines. Like a lot of things didn't feel connected, or they were just like too played out. Like my example, like even though this is technically during the pandemic era, was like seeing Rollins and Rey Mysterio just wrestle each other. It felt like the whole year.
He took his eye out, right, on the ring steps.
Little things like that would kill us. Where we're just like, dude, can like a storyline actually matter? And like, can we get over some things? Like just.
No, very true. So back to AEW though, real quick. In short, say what you want about AEW. I'm a big fan of AEW as well as WWE and even Impact becoming TNA yet again. I've made it abundantly clear, all these companies in the States. And again, like you said, AEW, one way or another, has elevated WWE for many a reason. Obviously, Triple H stepping in now full time, due to Endeavor, TKO is huge. He's finally able to do what he can without the handcuffs on. But even with that being said, they've, applied the pressure to a point, whether people like to admit it or not. WWE is always going to be in another category, next level, right? But, you cannot neglect the fact that, AEW does have top stars. They are getting talent from all over the world. The Jay Whites of the world, the Will Ospreys, Kota Ibushi. Say what you want, even Deonna Purrazzo last week. Me and you were at the show. We had a great time. The first Dynamite of 2024 here in New Jersey. Kev was with his sister. I was with my wife. We had an awesome time, which we'll talk about later in the show. And in short, not only WWE was elevated due to AEW, so was now becoming TNA. I think they've even elevated and stepped up their game, feeling like they really have a shot. We always knew WWE was leaps ahead of TNA, and they're ahead of AEW, obviously, too. But TNA's like, well, you know what? If I could get an honorable mention, or even a couple of years ago, they used to bounce back and forth talent from Impact to AEW, Kenny Omega, Christian Cage, and so on. They were both Impact champion for a little while as well. So I feel like all three companies, one way or another, benefited greatly from the birth of AEW. And again, AEW has a lot to learn. You could even say Tony Khan specifically, but we will not discount that. But I do think they've done a lot for the industry. They're not just a company that sells T-shirts, as many may say, whether it's Jim Cornette, Eric Bischoff, you name it, just the everyday common fan on Twitter or social media. If you're really watching their product, they have more than just great wrestling matches. I know storylines need to improve. I get frustrated too. You get frustrated. But you know what? I think it's not even been 5 full years since they've been on TV, and I think they've done a great job for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and just compare the number of years that WWE has existed compared to AEW. It's going to take them forever to even rival them, to actually catch up.
But they're doing a legitimate rival. Yeah,
you're right. But they're doing a pretty good job. In the meantime, you could call it an infant company at this point, 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and like you can do so many different battles of nuances for each company, right? Like you wanna look at the WWE women's scene, right? How long did it take before we got a serious women's roster? It wasn't in the early 2000s. It wasn't even in the early 2010s, right? It took almost, I think, until almost like what where we finally got something serious was like when the four horsewomen were all on the main roster.
Yeah,
That's
once
where,
they came up in the summer of 2015, and then
right?
Bailey came up the following year, right? It was no, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I think they came up the summer of 2016, either or.
yeah. It
It
like
was
you,
around
you
that
like
time.
you can make the argument that like maybe the catalyst of all of that was Paige, right? But before
Sure,
that, think about the women's wrestling before that.
it's true,
Like you
true.
you saw the glimpses of like Trish and Lita, what could be Mickey James, Victoria, Molly Holly, right? But that didn't account for the whole roster and all the feuds that they would have. It took forever, and I'm not going to say that the AEW's women's roster rivals that of WWE right now, but they're
Sure.
working
No,
their
no,
way
no.
there.
Yeah, and we're gonna
But
get to that. I want to talk to about that women's roster, top to bottom, because thus
yeah,
far in 2024, it's looking like they have some promise on the way. But so let's get into this review, Kev. A few other things. Again, we were there last week at Dynamite, great time. Even we were at
mm,
Collision in Jersey this past summer, where we saw CM Punk with AEW for the last time. Right, a month later, he was
yeah,
giving his walking papers, or after what was it, All In. But
yeah,
anyway, again, 5 years since the initial AEW rally. We had just met the Elite a couple months prior that fall. You know, we knew they had something brewing. We didn't know they were going to start their own promotion alongside Tony Khan, but we
yeah.
were all wondering where they were going to go. But there we had it. And so it's been really nice to see them grow again, at times painful, but they brought us a lot of joy and excitement as wrestling fans. I think, that's being pretty upfront and honest. So this
Mhm.
episode of AEW Dynamite, Kev, Homecoming in Jacksonville, again, Daly's Place. What is your favorite memory that took place at Daly's Place? I'm going to mention a few here, and then I'm going to tell you my favorite, just in case you're still thinking.
Mm.
I know I let you know earlier in the night I would be asking you this, so you weren't totally caught off guard. But we had moments like the debut of Brody Lee, Matt Hardy, debut of Sting, Christian Cage, all taking place there. Brody Lee defeating Cody for the TNT title. We had the Young Bucks defeating FTR for the tag titles when they had full gear there during the COVID era. Tony Khan, 2 years ago, announced the purchase of Ring of Honor there. St. Patrick's Day Slam, Thunder Rosa defeated Britt Baker. That was a brutal match, beautiful match, but at the same time, very bloody at
Yeah,
that. And then even on the more comedic side, we had Shaq and Jade Cargill in Jade Cargill's first match with AEW, who went on to defeat Cody Rhodes and Red Velvet. Countless others that I have not mentioned, too many to name. I think what was it? AEW did like a 3 hour YouTube video on just a compilation of some of the
yeah,
stuff over the last four and a
yeah.
half years
The highlight of
during
basically every episode.
during the COVID and other times. What I will say to you is, I've been a lifelong fan of Sting. I will have to say the debut of Sting in December of 2020 there at Daly's Place meant a whole hell of a lot to me because we never got to see the proper send off with him with WWE, only going up against the likes of Triple H, losing at WrestleMania 31. Later that fall, I want to say it was Night of Champions or Clash of Champions, where he lost to Seth Rollins. Unfortunately, he got injured his neck with that buckle bomb. We didn't see him after that,
Right.
unless it was just the ceremony for the Hall of Fame, spring of 2016. But that was it. We didn't see him after that. So glad to see him these last few years. We know he's in his mid 60s now, tagging with Darby. He'll be retiring March 3rd at Revolution. So I got to say the debut of Sting. But if I had to say a match specifically, I'm going to go with St. Patrick's Day Slam, Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker, that helped legitimize the AEW's women's division. There's still a major work in progress. We know that, but they have some big names. So if Tony Khan and company could really put these women in the right spot, which we'll get to later during the review, during the women's match,
Right.
we know they are building up, upon that division very good. Again, it's got to be worked correctly. But prior to this Thunder Rosa match, where she went on to defeat Britt Baker, I think a lot of us could agree that this women's roster was looking real funky for a while. And this totally changed the whole outlook and perspective for the women's division.
Yeah, absolutely. Afterwards we ended up getting what the formation of Paige's group, right? With
Well, that was about a year later. This was.
But that's what I'm
You're
saying. Like
just
down
talking
the
along
line,
the line. Yeah. That
yeah,
was
where we got to like really see more components of the women's roster,
correct. Correct.
and those components are still prevalent today, right now, and I think it's only going to get better. Fingers crossed. That not saying that. Um, I think we're going to see some good storylines. Just because I think Tony Khan, AEW in general, I think they're getting the hint that like the fan base has been frustrated.
Yeah.
I initially said last year, early on, that like 2022 was not a good year for I think both companies, to be honest. And then
Sure.
fast forward now, my personal opinion is that I think WWE took like 2 steps forward, and unfortunately AEW took another step backwards. Like somehow 2023 story wise was worse than 2022.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
No.
There's a lot that's left to be desired, and on a complete side note, it does not help the fact that maybe not so much Brian Pillman Jr. Leaving or not being re-signed to AEW, going to NXT as Lexis King, but of
Mhm.
course losing Jade Cargill. Say what you want about her as the professional wrestler,
Right.
she has an outstanding look. I think she's damn good on the microphone. She's funny too. I used to
Right.
love when she did that bit with Tony Schiavone, where she'd be like, "Tony, cut this shit." Like I thought that was great. It was just good. They could have made T-shirts from that. And so losing Jade to WWE was huge. And then of course CM Punk at Survivor Series. I mean, two people. Well, I know CM Punk was removed initially after Brawl Out, but the two people that were initially on the Fight Forever cover of their video game, right? And Jade's still there, right, when they're promoting it on the sides and on the screen and stuff. So two integral parts of, long story short, in the promotion of AEW, every city, every town they're in, CM Punk, Jade Cargill, CM Punk, Jade Cargill. So there was a lot. It was a very rough fall for AEW, not even just from their television programming itself, but people that were doing PR and all these other things looked at as the face of the company, now making their way either back to WWE or for the very first time. So that was tough. I mean, it's out of his control, but at the very same time, that's difficult too.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, we had a change of like different managerial positions, for the company as well. People leaving, people getting promotions elsewhere, whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
just some people resigning. So yeah, I felt like it was kind of a play on word when you said during the fall season, because it really felt like that for AEW.
Yeah.
Um, but that's why hopefully, if we want to continue to play on words, we could spring forward with AEW. That they could
Look at him
do
go.
that they can do a lot more with both rosters,
I'm hoping
and
so. Hoping so. They got some
as
good
long
good
as
names.
I think, and we've discussed this before. The issue with AEW is not the matches itself. It's not what happens inside of the ring. It's what happens outside of the ring.
Yeah.
So if they can get to a point where they're telling decent, even good level, they don't have to get to great yet.
Right.
That could come in 2025. But if they get to a point where it's like good story, telling, I think that will intrigue a lot more fans. I mean, will they convince more WWE fans? Probably not, but they can convince other just in general wrestling fans.
Right. Or I mean, simply put, just keep the AEW fan base, your true few. Well, hopefully it's more than a few, but your
Right.
true
A few
group that
millions.
a few millions. Keep them happy, right? Keep them wanting to tune in to Wednesday night Dynamite and Saturday night Collision and Rampage. It is what it is. Take it or leave it. I don't think that's really going to change much. Typically pre-taped for Friday nights, 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you're just like a diehard wrestling fan, which more times than not, since I'm watching Rampage after SmackDown. But either or, we said what we said. We feel how we feel, and let's get into this review finally. Oh, by the way, we're not going to let you go here until you tell us your favorite moment that took place in Daly's place
Damn.
in Jacksonville, Florida. I see what you did there. Very slick, very slick. Give us one, even if it's just out of that short list that I had made mention of. Those few. Anything come to mind that really was like jaw dropping or?
Yeah, even though they're not my favorite wrestlers by any means, I think they're amazing in the ring, but like I'm not gonna say that they're my top 10, not even in my top 20 whatsoever. But the debut of FTR, I thought was a really big moment.
They're not in your top 20. Wait. At least tag team they got to be.
Well,
or do you mean like really? They're not even a top 20 tag team, do you?
I think well, if I'm being like biased, like I think
You get me
in
canceled
ring
here, bro.
ability, they're
Yeah.
probably in the top 10. But like, what I call my favorite? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, they're not your personal favorite,
yeah,
like
yeah,
top 10.
yeah,
Okay, that's fair.
correct.
But from a
Yeah.
working standpoint, they're fantastic. See,
Mm-hmm.
Dax
Yeah.
Cash, we think you're outstanding.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at those guys. Like like if you look at them, right, not knowing anything about them, if you don't know anything about the world of wrestling, you look at these two individuals and you'd be like, there's no way these are top performers when it comes to like a tag team wrestling.
Right.
Like the physicality that they can perform, and they're capable of, like, of course, doing a lot of different styles, and they can put on great matches whatsoever. But that's that,
All
and
right.
they're not my favorites.
So is it the
But the
arrival
debut
of
of
them,
them,
or them,
what
was it them becoming tag champs, or was it them come to the company? What
no, it
was
was,
it?
yeah, the debut itself.
Debut. Okay.
Just because there was so much, kind of like building up to like the whole quote unquote feud of the Young Bucks and FTR, because uh, in a way it felt like, if you want to go this route, is like, did AEW start because of like the Young Bucks making fun of FTR, and like that whole gag, and I want to say like 2016, 2017, give or take, on the BTE channel
Because for
of
those
them.
unfamiliar, FTR, when they were the revival in NXT, WWE, and FTR stood
Yeah,
for F the revival, right?
yeah.
And so the revival, once they left, they just kept that, right? So the Young
Mm-hmm.
Bucks, did the Young Bucks birth that acronym? Is that right?
Essentially they did.
Okay.
Um, so once we knew that, like, the revival at the time, when they were kind of fed up with the BS storylines that they were being pushed with in WWE, they left. We're like, are they going to debut in AEW? And surely they did.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with their debut, they come face to face with who else but the Young Bucks.
That's right. Yeah.
The guys that were making fun of them, but at the same time actually helped build their reputation. Because a lot of people, I think, outside of WWE didn't really know who FTR, the Revival, were. And
That's fair.
once we got to see, the matchup between these guys, man, they put on so many good
They're
matches.
fantastic. They really are. They're fantastic duo. Dax Harwood
Mm-hmm.
and Cash Wheeler, or they Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder, right, in
Mm-hmm.
WWE. Fantastic tag team, and they said they're going to retire with AEW, right? So that seems to be
Yeah,
where they're going to go with that. All right,
yeah.
well, let's get into this review finally, right?
Mm-hmm.
This review we got this for this show, rather, we got to see a lot of the Dark Order, as we knew we would. Of course, Brody Lee, the short time he was with the company, former TNT champion. There, he was only there in 2020 from March until his untimely passing. The last time he was on TV was October, I believe, when he got sick. Then, of course, he passed. I want to say that it was the day after Christmas, right? 2020.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there was a lot of the Dark Order on the show. Of course, a lot of Team Taz guys. We got to see all four members in some capacity. We got to see Brian Cage, Powerhouse Hobbs, Absolute Ricky Starks, and Hook. So let's go to match one here. We had Hangman Adam Page versus the Blackpool Combat Club's Claudio Castagnoli. Hangman took a swig of someone's beer, Kev, as he usually would pre-COVID. I think that was cool to see, only because they were there. And to end this matchup, it was very physical, as one would imagine. Back-to-back buckshot lariats for the win, Adam Page. Growing out that beard, by the way. Do you notice that? He's got the mustache coming in.
Yeah.
His mustache is coming in like yours. It's coming in real strong.
I would
I
say
like
it was stronger than mine.
It
That's what
looks
I
good
noticed
on
that for
him.
sure.
It fits him well, dude. It fits great. Honestly, it really helps his character. In my opinion,
Yeah.
this is, if I could just say, and then I want to hear your thoughts on this match, and then we'll move on to the next one because we have a pretty loaded show to talk about on Dynamite here. Since his feud with Swerve, late September, early October, I know he lost both of those matches, right? They've been fantastic, even though Swerve's got him 2-0, likely to see a third probably happen at Revolution. I think that Hangman Adam Page, this is the best Hangman Adam Page I've seen in AEW. This is the most serious I personally have taken him. I know we feel very similar with him, that he's needed that spark. We've spoke about it for a couple of years now. Even when he was world champion,
Yeah.
he needed something that was just missing, some intangible. And I feel like he's damn near found it. I feel like he believes in his character. He feels like he's his full self now. And this is the first time probably ever, even though, again, he's a former world champion there. This is the first time I consider him to be truly in that world title picture. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. Like going forward, hopefully, this is something that he capitalizes on for his character. Just adding more levels to the whole cowboy regime.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was really sick and tired of like the lonely cowboy, the depressed cowboy,
Yeah.
this guy who had friends and then left him, or his friend, however you want to see it. I was just really tired of that. And then like him never making up his mind with the whole Dark Order and everything. It just really, I don't think it painted his character too well, to be honest.
It was funny, but it did nothing for him to get him to where he is today. Like as
it
far as
wasn't
that.
even funny to me. I
Yeah.
hated it.
Well, it wasn't a knee slapper.
Yeah,
It was just
it,
comedy.
it was like, oh man, I felt like every time he was on screen at that point, like his character was suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But I think throughout 2023, he did a good job of like kind of like fixing that. Kind of going in the right direction. But as you said, if it felt like there was another push already this year, so I don't think he's there yet. I think he still has a good distance to go finding his character. I don't know what kind of character he wants to be, represented. Because I don't want to say like he should go like full Austin, like always like drinking beer and everything. But
No, I don't think so either.
But I don't know, something. I can't say for sure because hey, I'm not a pro wrestler myself, so I can't give him any advice like that. But I feel like you were saying, he's almost there. He's almost gonna find like
He's
that
right
perfect
there, man.
character.
He's right there. Yeah, he's right there. And the reason I didn't mind the beer spot tonight was they're back in Daly's place. That's around the time he used to do it a lot. If they go to any old town, and they're going to be in his hometown, I believe, of Virginia this Saturday for Collision and Battle of the Belts 9, which we'll talk about. Good old Battle of the Belts coming on immediately following Collision from 10 to 11, I believe.
Yeah.
And if he's in Virginia and does it, that's fine. He's home. But otherwise, I don't want to see that either. But nonetheless, I think his character work is really revved up. And honestly, I think we could even say maybe it's due to a year and a half ago when he was last world champion and, it got ugly between him and CM Punk. I feel like it took him personally to another level,
Right. And we talked about this off screen. Even if like per se, because right now, I still don't see him as a top guy, like the main guy in AEW. And I don't know what his situation is regarding his contract, but if he were to leave, still work on this character, right? And make him more rough and tough or something.
He re-signed with the Bucks and Kenny.
Okay.
Last
Yeah.
year,
But how long was that for? Do you know when that's
I want to say it's at least 3 or 4 years. I don't know if it's 5, but I'm pretty sure it's in a 3-4 year ballpark. I want to say.
And that was last year, right? So somewhere between give or take 27, 28.
Yeah, I'd say at least. And I just want to say real quick, I don't see him as the guy in AEW just yet, but he's certainly in the conversation. If I were to name 10 guys right now, he would be one of them.
Yeah.
But as you're saying,
I think I would leave him just outside of the top 10, but
okay.
I know that that's an argument that's kind of a nuance,
Sure.
But yeah, I hopefully, well, I was gonna say initially, like if his contract was up pretty soon, and if he, kept working on it, went somewhere like Impact Wrestling, and then came back, whether it be like a year later, whether it be a short-term contract, and then we see him because fans are a sucker for that. Someone's gone for a few months and they come back and they're they get all that fan support. It would really help him. So yeah, I expect better things for him this year.
Definitely. I think he's on the right trajectory. I would say a year ago, this time, or obviously January 2023, I would have said maybe like along the lines of what you're saying, maybe bounce around somewhere else. I don't know what that might be. Again, Impact TNA or somewhere, maybe come back, refresh, rejuvenated or something. Who knows? Maybe end up in NXT and then bump up to the main roster. But I think where he's at right now is fine. I think he's on the perfect trajectory, and I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to have a lot of nice matchups. I don't know if he's going to necessarily get gold again, but I think he'll get singles gold, whether that's international or something else. But apparently Adam Cole said that's Roderick Strong's title. We'll talk about that later in the show. So we had an 8-man tag team matchup here. Orange Cassidy, man, he's got to be tired. Dude, he worked Dynamite last week where we were there. He worked this past Saturday Collision. And here he is again, Orange Cassidy. Preston Vance came out of hiding. They had to dust him off. Jose, the assistant, was with him. Number 10, formerly of the Dark Order, of course. All the former members, which we didn't see Alex Reynolds and John Silver, of course, but they put, some Dark Order presence on the show. Dustin Rhodes and Adam Copeland, or Gold Dust and Edge for the WWE fans out there. And then they were going up against the heels, the Mogul Embassies, Gates of Agony, and Brian Cage. They are the two-time Ring of Honor six-man tag team champions with Prince Nana. And then we had the Murder Hawk, Lance Archer. They probably had to dust him off, too, alongside Preston Vance. Rarely see him. I know we've talked about him on many an episode of an AEW review in some regard, when usually when he's not even on it, we're like, where the hell's Lance Archer? Again, there's almost as many managers out here as there were wrestlers, Kev. Jose, the assistant, Prince Nana. Thought we were going to see a triple threat with Jake Robertson there. Anyway, simply put, Preston Vance hits, was it Bishop Khan with a discus lariat to get the win. Little ode to Brody Lee, the late, great Brody Lee. Baby faces win again, back to back. I said, look, it's a tribute show. It looks like all the baby faces are probably going to win, which I think it ended up being like 5 out of 6 baby faces won, but we'll get to that. And this was the second consecutive match that we saw somebody win with a lariat. So how about that? Yeah. What were your thoughts on this match? The teams, anything really catch your eye, or was it just, a good old fun wrestling match? That's kind of how I took it as.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was too worked up about it in any means. It was just kind of like, oh, this match is happening.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's how I kind of felt about a lot of this episode for the most part.
Me too.
Where it was just like matches happening, to be honest.
Don't overthink it. Yeah.
I was going to say, I felt like there was a lot more development from the prior week.
Oh, absolutely. That kind of set the stage. And this was a good show. Again, we're going to talk about the women in a very short while once we get to that match. Did not necessarily expect to see any debuts, especially with the women. Mercedes Moné. I know that name's been going around for a couple of weeks now, ever since the WWE deal allegedly fell apart. But as cool as it would have been to do it in, again, headquarters, Jacksonville, it wasn't needed on this show. And you want to do it in, I'm not going to say a sellout or a packed house, but either save that for a pay-per-view, which, again, their next one is until March, or, a big arena show, right? You might not be, what are they usually doing on an arena show? Anywhere from, 4 to 7,000, maybe 7,000 reaching a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, Daly's Place, how much do they pack in there? 2,000 maybe? It's a small venue.
Yeah, that's a tiny venue.
Small. Maybe not even 2,000. But anyway, I'm glad there was no debuts. Long story short, we got to catch one last week in Deonna Purrazzo, which was great. And anyway, we go to this next segment here. Now we see the new AEW World's Champion, Samoa Joe, coming out and looking fresh in his suit. The new title. Not a different plate, though. It wasn't that title we were looking at last week. It's the same plate, the AEW logo, which I'm happy about. I'm not crazy about the other one with the, the one we were discussing with the old, black backdrop. Just didn't fit. So it looks like they're sticking with the old look, which I'm okay with. Obviously, they gave the black strap. They got rid of the Burberry strap that MJF had for over a year. Belt, what have you. And so Joe looks good. He's, he said what he said. Do you remember what he initially had mentioned? Because to be honest with you, this is the only part of the show, and I know he didn't say much, but this was the only part of the show that I wasn't able to sit down, to run around the house a little bit and hear what he had to say before he knew it. Swerve Strickland made his way out with the Mogul Embassy. So
right,
I know it was brief, whatever he had mentioned.
Well, it was more. I'm gonna try to give like
let's make it quick. We don't got to harp on it.
Well, it was just him like things are gonna change around here, me being champion, and then the way we do things essentially. That was just kind of the spiel of it.
Did he call out Swerve? Is that why Swerve came out, or?
No, he didn't. I don't think he called anyone out in particular, because it was just like he was just saying like no longer are you gonna have to whine on social media to get a title shot. He's like basically like, you got a record, you got a good winning record, and all right, that'll be it.
You're okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll hop right into it. Swerve Strickland Mogul Embassy came out. Basically Swerve, as he alluded to at the end of his match for World's End when he defeated Dustin Rhodes, who filled in for Keith Lee. We were all disappointed that match didn't finally take place after we were hoping for a damn near 2-year payoff. But anyway, when Swerve was walking up the ramp, Kev, I don't know if you remember this, but he was, doing the championship, he gesture with his hands as the championship. And Swerve, he ain't talking about the international title. He's certainly not talking about any of the Ring of Honor titles, right? In TNC, he wants to be the first black AEW World Champion. He said it for better part of 6 months now. and he means it, and I think he will be. Not sure when in 2024, but we think it will happen at some point this year. So after that, Hangman Adam Page makes his way out, little hobbled. He had a brutal physical match with Claudio, of course, getting the win there. And before you knew it, Hook made his way out. And we're going to talk about this briefly, Kev. So I'm sure within the last 24, 48 hours, you saw the tweets going crazy, or at least you read it. I know you don't have a Twitter or X account, but I know you're on Reddit. So did you hear about that with the whole Tony Khan and Eric Bischoff and Jinder Mahal and Hook and all that stuff?
I caught something of it. Yeah.
So Tony Khan, in brief, I'll make this as brief as possible because I really don't want to get caught up on it too much. The good old TK had you know what they need, Kev? Tony Khan needs me to step in because I'm going to listen. Shout out to my wife, right? I don't know if she's going to be crazy about me mentioning this, but a few years ago, my wife, her Twitter fingers were running wild. And I'm like, Simone, if and when I ever make it in any industry, whether it's wrestling, music, whatever, I was like, I can't have you doing this. She's calling out everybody on Twitter. Look, I'm okay. You have a disagreement. You got to retweet somebody. People act a fool on the internet, social media. Sure. By all means. It got to the point, Kev, where, and this was probably a little bit before COVID, it got to the point where I told Simone, I didn't force her, but I said it would be a great idea if you were to deactivate your Twitter account. And so she did. She did because she was getting out of hand. So I say that to say this, Tony Khan needs me. He needs to deactivate his Twitter, Kev, or at least somebody needs to oversee it. The man's running wild. So a lot of people were not thrilled with the fact that Hook is getting and going to be the first opponent for Samoa Joe, right? The first opponent for the new AEW World Champion, Samoa Joe. Hook, who's the two-time FTW champion. Make of that title what you want.
Right.
Now, apparently, Tony Khan, a lot of people had a lot to say about Hook being, and I like Hook, but I don't necessarily think he should be the first one, especially going up against Joe. But anyway, that being said, Tony Khan goes a double standard. Hook is 28-1 career record on winning streaks. Calls out the champion in Samoa Joe, a logical challenge, sparks online outrage. Now he goes and talks about WWE, which he's really got to stop. He says Jinder Mahal has literally lost every single match he's in for the past year, immediately gets title shot. Where is the rage? And then, by the way, AEW Dynamite tomorrow on TBS. Now, look, I understand where he's coming from with the whole Jinder Mahal bit. Jinder Mahal came out for the first time in a very long time last week, actually did not confront The Rock. The Rock confronted him, took care of him. Came out this past week on Raw, essentially challenged Seth Rollins. Now, look, we'll take it back to, July of 2012, the inaugural NXT Championship, where Seth Rollins defeated Jinder Mahal to become the very first NXT champion. They have history. So you know what? I don't need Jinder Mahal winning 20, 30, 40 matches in a row. I get it. Everybody who is going to contend for a championship of any sort should be racking up some wins and have some notable victories and on a streak of sorts and not be, in catering or at home, whatever. But it's all in good fun that Jinder Mahal Seth thing. Nobody thinks Jinder's going to defeat Seth Rollins, right? I mean, I'm not saying anybody thinks Hook is going to defeat Samoa Joe by any stretch either, but I'm saying Hook being 28-1 from a booking standpoint, I think it's fantastic. Hook's good. What you see is what you get with him. Personally, to me, dude, the last 2 years, I've liked Hook. I loved Hook from the very start, but I don't think he's gotten any better or any worse. Again, what you see is what you get. So what I'm saying here is, okay, he's got this FTW championship or whatever, and then we're going to talk about Tony Khan, which is really why we're bringing this up. It's not so much about Hook and, him being Samoa Joe's first opponent. It is what it is. But, Hook, even though he's racked up all these wins, obviously, from a booking standpoint, that's what pro wrestling is. I guess
I feel like
you know where I'm headed with this.
I'll try to help you out, but for me, it's like despite his victories, he hasn't impressed anyone. If that makes any sense,
right?
Because his character work. How would I explain it? I feel like his character, if I were to describe it, is, and I'm not trying to offend anyone here.
I don't want to say undeserving.
No. I feel like it's kind of a representation of Generation Z, right? Mm-hmm. Where they kind of like always play it back, whatever. Like they always try to be like very extremely chill, nonchalant about everything, just like very laid back. It kind of feels like that to me. Like, and I'm fine with his character being that, but he hasn't really shown us a lot. when it comes to like promos or anything.
There needs to be more. There needs to be more. Yeah.
There needs to be a lot more development before we can invest ourselves in that character, and when we invest our time in that character, we'll care. But because there isn't that, there's a lack of that. There's a lack of interest. There's a lack of care.
Right.
That's why a lot of fans are like, "Who cares if he's 20? What is it?
28-1
one?
in the last
That's why
year,
people are like,
change, whatever. Yeah.
Had he been
It's kind of who cares, right? Right.
Had he been really killing it in 2023,
Sure.
that
I think that's what it is.
Would have been, totally.
I think that's what
erased.
it is, dude.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is, and you could fault Hook, you could fault Tony Khan. Personally, I would fault both of them for him not developing to getting where he is. And I briefly want to talk about this, Jade Cargill, right? A lot of people say, oh, she basically used and abused AEW and went over to WWE, and I don't necessarily agree from an ethics standpoint, her leaving to go to WWE. Do I think she was going to be in the AEW Women's World Championship picture? No. So at that very standpoint, I don't think Jade, she's probably like, hey, look, when am I going to get a better chance or opportunity than now?
Yeah.
So TK set me up perfectly. I got to go now and try to make myself an even bigger, better star.
I don't blame her one bit.
And that's why Triple H has, everybody's saying, where's Jade? Where's Jade? And I agree. It's been about 3 months since the announcement. Maybe we'll see her at the Royal Rumble in 2 weeks' time, Kev.
That's what.
But at the very same time, that's what I'm expecting too. I'd be shocked not to see her. But even though 3.5, 4 months by then since she's been with the company working hard, but at least Triple H sees like, look, again, great presentation, great on the mic. She needs work, and that's no disrespect. She needs work. She needs to tie up some loose ends with her as a professional wrestler. But damn it, once she's on WWE television, she will be where we need her to be, or at least on that path. And I think a place like NXT would greatly benefit a Hook. He's got a lot to offer, but I feel like for him to be taken not just serious, but to the next level, a la going up against the likes of a Samoa Joe in a world title match.
Yeah.
That is where Jade made the right decision 1000%, because she knows, look, I can really be not just looked at as a force, but taken as a serious threat going forward. And I think that's kind of where we're at with Hook. So again, in short, TK, just get off Twitter, bro. Please, I saw you go right ahead. I'll say the last
I was going to say essentially what he needs is a social media manager, like someone who's always going to do, personal tweets for him. Yeah, I'm sure he could pass along like what he wants to say, and then they'll clean it up. They'll do the best they can and revise, the what he wants to say, so it doesn't come out so like venomous or whatever.
Because once it's out there, right? That's the thing about the internet, good, bad, and different. Once it's out there, it's retweeted and screenshotted, and before you know it, you're on 10 different websites and social media. It's just not a good look, dude. So Jinder Mahal wrote, in a retweet to that, he goes, "Who the F is Hook? Watch Monday Night Raw on USA Network Monday at 8 p.m. And then Dax Harwood, of course, of FTR, came out and wrote, "Hook rules, hashtag AEW Dynamite." Nothing wrong with standing up for, your own company, your own fellow coworkers or whatever. Just like Corey Graves had something nice to say as well. I forget exactly what the tweet was. It was brief, supporting Jinder Mahal and back and forth as each company and friends should do. But simply that being said, I think it really comes down to TK, just like you said, needs a social media manager to say the least, and B, again, Hook, can he hold his own? Absolutely, but to take his character and wrestling ability to the next level, something must change. That's all.
And the only people entertained by it, is obviously us wrestling fans. And had you given me or anyone else 100 chances of guessing like two people who would be involved in like a Twitter beef, never would I have I guessed, Jinder Mahal and Hook. Never.
Yeah, and TK, TK and Bischoff have been going at it for years now on Twitter. That they had their own separate exchange. I'm not going to get into that as far as that whole thing was concerned. And Dax Harwood got involved too. It was a mess. Anyway, let's move on to this next segment here, Kev. We're backstage. Tony Storm tells her butler Luther, in short, to set up a meeting with Donna Palazzo, talking about Deonna Purrazzo, who called out the Women's World Champion last week on Dynamite and told, Mariah May to send her a message. So that was pretty much that. We'll see Deonna Purrazzo later on in this show. And here we are, match number 3. Now, these are two of Kev's personal favorites. We have Was it the Spanish God, Sammy Guevara, going up against Absolute Ricky Starks, one half of the AEW World Tag Team Champions. Again, this Saturday after AEW Collision, we're going to see Battle of the Belts 9. One of the featured matches, one of the 3 matches that will be taking place is Big Bill and Ricky Starks putting their tag titles on the line, Kev, against Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. I think that's going to be a good one. Guevara defeated Starks in this match with a cradle. Post-match handshake between the two. I knew Ricky Starks wasn't going to be that nice of a guy after taking that loss. Mm-hmm. This led to an attack by Big Bill. But then we see Jericho run in with a baseball bat and hits Big Bill with a code breaker as Judas plays in the background. Kev, this reminded me, while this fight was going on, they went and fought in the arena. This reminded me of a couple years ago, Anarchy in the Arena. You remember Moxley's music, Wild Thing, was playing for minutes on end, and I'm like, this is kind of cool, but I'm like, I think his music's supposed to be off. But I was like, Anarchy in the arena, whatever, and they're back at the homecoming in Jacksonville. Why not play Judas for the fans? It was fun. This was good. What did you think of this match, very briefly, and who do you think is going to win Saturday? Are the tag titles going to change hands since, the Golden Jets aren't available because Kenny Omega's on the shelf for a bit with Jericho? Do you think him and his good friend Sammy Guevara are going to win?
I'll start off by saying no, I don't think the titles will change hands.
Okay.
And then as for the match itself, I liked it. It was a good representation of the future to come. I'm always giving high praise to Ricky Starks. And I also give high marks to Sammy as well. I know for a fact that he's not well liked for many different reasons. Some people just can't get behind him, and I understand it, but I like to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
I do think that he could have a really good year, Sammy, if he, and I wish this would have already started, but it hasn't. I wish he would have changed his character upon coming back. Kind of, what when he started with the company, what he was Sammy, like the Panda Guevara, right? He had his
that was
mask,
like a week or two till the Inner Circle, yeah.
Right. And then then we got the Inner Circle version of him, of being the Spanish God.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And since then we haven't really seen a lot of development from his character, right? Too much to an extent. He's gotten better on the mic now compared to when he first started, when he was just doing the cue cards. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, we spoke about that.
But I think it's time for him to add new layers to it. Change, everything. And I mean everything. Despite me liking Sammy, I think I want to see more changes. Get the new graphics for your Titantron or whatever, right? New music, new ring gear. Maybe the trunks aren't working. Maybe start wearing pants, the tights. I don't know. Do something. I want to see his character develop. Just kind of, I don't know, maybe do like a 180 word, something that, it will help more fans get behind him,
So I personally
kind of take him more serious. Kind of what we discussed with, his name's evading me right now. Part of
who's that?
Blackpool Combat Club.
Oh, I was just thinking of it too. Wheeler Yuta. We had this discussion over a year ago. Yeah,
right.
We talked about that a year ago.
I think that Sammy needs to kind of do something similar to that. Does he need to be part of that faction? No, but just kind of change his character up in some different ways. That way that people can understand that he is trying to not only change his character, but he's trying to change as a human being, not be seen as a crappy, mature person, right?
So personally, I feel a lot different about Sammy than I did a year and a half ago, to be honest with you, when I was kind of not the biggest fan of his. Not really a particular reason. I just didn't like, I don't know. It was just, I don't know if it was necessarily just his, wrestling persona or him as an individual. I don't know. Long story short, I slightly agree. I don't think he needs the complete overhaul that you're mentioning. I think he needs a slight tweak. Again, I know you're you're not overly critical or overly analytical, but I know you have some constructive criticism about Sammy as well as you do about Hangman Adam Page. But as far as both of those individuals are concerned, I think they both need slight tweaks. And I think Hangman's right about there. But Sammy, I know what you're saying. He needs a slight tweak. Could it be as simple as ring gear? Again, like I joked about with Wheeler, ring gear, haircut, whatever. Or maybe some facial hair. Who knows? Maybe the guy needs a goatee, a good beard. I don't know. But
who knows what it is? Could it? I know a lot of people are going to say it's his hair for sure. Either grow it out or cut it off. Whatever.
Yeah. That's the one thing. If I'm nitpicking,
maybe he can also do 5 o'clock shadow. It doesn't have to be a full beard. A fake beard. And start wearing, like I said, the tights. Do something. It doesn't have to be black. He could still do colors if he wants,
something slightly different. I agree.
Something, but that's what I'm
we need a
saying.
slight tweak. Yeah, we need something different.
And I'm saying also change the music because I know for me personally, like every time I'm reading, right? I think every time people say that, like the moment they hear his music hit, they get pissed, right? Because the first thing you hear is like Sammy Guevara, like, and people already want to do that. So change it up,
Well, to be honest with you, it comes off very heelish. The initial Sammy Guevara, which a lot of the time he was a heel, right? Not the whole time. He bounced back and forth between babyface and heel. Yeah. But no, that is very true. Before we move over to this next matchup here, the fourth match of the night, what is the status of Ricky Stark's contract? Do you personally think he is as good as gone, being that his best friend in wrestling, essentially two of his best friends, Cody Rhodes and Jade Cargill, both with WWE now? He has unfinished business with Punk. He didn't get to have that match at All Out with CM Punk, filled in Bryan Danielson, right? I'm sure he wants that match with Punk, which Andrade will get with Punk once he probably shows up at the Royal Rumble this year. And it was just, last week or 2 weeks ago when, I follow Natalia on social media. They usually have a lot of people over at their place for in-ring work. I mean, we've seen members of the Gates of Agony there. There's been a lot of AEW people. It's no surprise. Impact, Moose has been over there. But Ricky Starks was over there training last week with Jade Cargill and many others. So it's nothing like, oh, my God, just because the ring they have has the WWE turnbuckle pads. But do you see him making that transition over to WWE? And do you know when his contract is up?
Well, I was going to ask you if you knew when his contract was up.
I don't.
Because I'm going to, I'll play out like, a few different scenarios, but I'll just try to, explain. If, let's say his contract is up exactly like within 1 year, right? Like by the end of the year, it's up, he's a free agent. Do I think he'll leave? I think if I was him, I would say, yeah. Now, if you're asking me, should he leave? I don't think he should leave. I think he's set up in a prime position where, an MJF was like early on in the company where like, hey, you're going to be champion in a few years, whether you believe it or not. And that's how I see it. I gave him my own nickname. I was like centerpiece because I have this vision that I've said it before. Like I want to see a faction of, the four pillars.
Yeah,
plus,
you see him being the fifth pillar, realistically,
right?
In your opinion.
The centerpiece. And what we have the what is it? The Undisputed Kingdom. They got 5 guys, right?
Yeah, they sure do.
When MJ when
although MJF's going to be out a while. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say when Adam Cole is all healed up, well, I'm sure MJF will be right there, maybe a month or two healed up.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Himself. And that I'm sure that they'll find of like, that's what I'm saying. Like I would love to see a scenario where they're like, we have a common enemy. It's the Undisputed Kingdom. Why don't we work together? Boom. And at that point, I'm assuming, and maybe all this could happen sometime in the summer, maybe towards the fall, early fallish, September or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know if it doesn't happen in June, maybe September. But
all right.
At that point, I don't see Big Bill and Ricky still being tag champs. They lost the belts to whomever.
I think at latest, if they don't lose the Battle of the Belts this Saturday, bro, I feel as if they lose to whomever it is at Revolution March 3rd.
Yeah. So that way, should that faction form, right? And I don't know what they would call themselves. They're not going to call themselves.
Right. This is a far out scenario, by the way. I hope it happens too, but I don't think it's going to happen.
But if it did happen, I think it would bring a lot of attention to Ricky, and it would only benefit him. And if he wanted to leave, at the end of the year, it would help. It would help the company AEW. Like it would look really good how they had these guys that started with the company and then like they rose up the ranks.
Yeah. Good luck getting Jack Perry babyface.
I think it could work.
Yeah.
I know we still have the psycho fanboys for CM Punk, but it could still work out. The rest of the crowd,
the other 4 I could easily see as good of a heel Ricky is, and Sammy obviously is looked at as a heel in and outside of the ring. The other 4 won't have a problem being baby. I don't know about Jack. We'll see. And when
but the thing is, we got to remember that like for the longest time he was a baby face. So like
he was.
So the fans are capable of cheering for him.
Right, but you also got to tie it into the fact that although there was a lot of people that were happy CM Punk left, a lot of people were not happy that CM Punk left. Big CM Punk fans in AEW. So whenever Jack Perry shows up, especially maybe Chicago, he's going to get a some loud boos. But even that being said,
Yeah.
well,
But hey,
we would have to see when his
it'll
contract's
pass
up.
over. The thing is, like that happens. There's always situations, right? I'm sure he'll get booed the first week, maybe even the second week, but like a month in,
I think it
like
would die down pretty quick.
yeah, it's gonna die down really
All
quick,
right.
because just look, I mean, what happened if you want to go back to the situation with like Brawl Out, like when when what is it, the Young Bucks were wrestling again in Chicago, right? Like, of
Yeah.
course, people booed, but like after that episode,
The
did like
trios match, right? The trios.
yeah.
Yeah.
But after that, did like a lot of the fan base really care? No, that all the booing died down. So I have the same feeling that will
But
happen.
the one thing is though, I
Mm.
mean, I would assume you would have to bring Jack Perry back heel, right? If he comes back tomorrow or Revolution, he's got to come back heel. So even if people aren't giving him raucous boos, he's gonna be getting booed big or small, I guess you could say. There's no way you could turn him to Jungle Boy in 2024. I don't think so, even if it's
Well,
December.
I don't think it would necessarily be Jungle Boy. It'll come back as a face Jack Perry, because like
Okay.
he could still wear his leather jacket or whatever,
All right, maybe later in the year.
Yeah. But like, and even if like, let's say he debuts, like, well, not debuts, but he returns back as a heel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all it takes is for him to get beat up by the Undisputed Kingdom.
That's true. Get jumped a few times, then you organically somewhat become the victim here, and it's a numbers game, and then they start to feel for you.
And maybe that will be, who knows, the turning point where the other individuals try to make the save, and then they form the group. Who knows what the hell happens? Right?
Well, we'll see. I mean, the biggest thing here is when is Ricky Stark's contract up, which we'll have to find out about that. But that being said, I feel the same as you do. Not so much about the faction bit, but I feel the same as do I think Ricky Starks is going to leave AEW when his contract's up and join WWE? 1000%. I think it's pretty much a done deal. Do I think he should stay with AEW? Yes, because like you said, I think he's on the right trajectory. I know it seemed uncertain at times for him and for the fans of Ricky Starks where he's going to go. He had a pretty solid 2023, win, lose, or draw, going up against the likes of Jericho earlier in the year. I know towards the tail end of 2022, he was MJF's first opponent, right, for the World Championship. He lost that match, but that was good, spotlighting him. He went up against Danielson in a couple grueling matches this past fall. And so he's had a pretty good year. Obviously, tag champs the last few months with Big Bill. That's been good. But at the same time, when would he be champion, world champion? It's hard to say because, again, the reemergence of Hangman Adam Page, Switchblade Jay White, Swerve Strickland, new champion Samoa Joe, so many others, a returning Kenny Omega. I mean, who really knows? Moxley's always in the conversation, even Claudio, really. I'm sure there's a few other names I missed. So Will Ospreay joining the company in a matter of days or months, not even months, days or weeks, rather. So it's really tough to say for Ricky Starks either, too. Should I stick around? Am I really going to see this opportunity happen? I understand if he leaves.
Yeah. I mean, because if you want to talk about the championship picture, the main title for AEW, I want to say there's only four guys. And I'm not even talking about the four pillars necessarily. It's that right now at this moment in time, who do we see as like true contenders, right?
Yeah.
I would say you got Ricky Starks, you got Swerve, you got Jay White, and I think Ospreay. Those are like the only four guys that I see who can make a legitimate run in 2024. Of course, there's always other unknown factors that could happen. Someone's character starts to blow up, and we start cheering for them, or someone else returns. We sign someone. Maybe the company signs someone, and it's like, all right, now we're going to push this guy really heavily. So
maybe they finally decide to give Malachi Black a singles match in AEW, which I don't think he had one. Kev, in 2023, yeah. I mean, how bad is that? What a black eye to the company. No pun intended. I know he usually walks around with a black eye. But anyway, trios champion, maybe a tag title hunt sometime this year alongside Buddy Matthews. They've been running tag lately. This past Saturday in Collision, right? Didn't they go up against FTR? Who won that one? I forget. I had it on, but I was running back and forth. Do you remember who won that?
I don't want to say the wrong answer.
Oh, well, it's all right. It's 50-50 shot there. Well, either or. We know that Malachi Black, it's good seeing him in trios and tag. House of Black's great. But the bottom line is here, he needs to get some singles opportunities.
Right.
I could be in the conversation. I just feel like, well, I know that Tony Khan doesn't look at him in that way, which is kind of crazy to me. He may have only won he's a former NXT champion. He didn't win any singles gold on main roster WWE, right? I don't remember him being the IC or US champion. So I guess that was his only gold in WWE. But I mean, the guy can go. I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, looked at in that light.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's definitely another name in the conversation.
Yeah.
Should be.
I don't see him there, but he's someone capable of being there. More like he's more than ready. He's got the faction. We know that he's decent on the mic. He's got the ring skills. It's just he's got to get that push, and it sucks that he hasn't had that opportunity yet. And I don't know how he honestly feels like it. What are his thoughts of like his former employer? Like,
sure,
was it very soured, or is he willing to go back? Or is he
I think Malachi is going to do an Andrade thing, and realistically, regardless of the success of House of Black or not in AEW, I think whenever his contract is up, much like unfortunately, with the Ricky Starks going to WWE for the first time, I could also see Malachi becoming Aleister Black yet again with WWE. Which, hey, look, under a Triple H led regime, I'm okay with that. Yeah. So again, that's probably why Andrade's wife Charlotte's going to be on the shelf for the better part of this year, but he's probably like excited to go back, honestly.
For all we know, if his contract's up this year and he debuts back, in WWE, because he doesn't need to go back to NXT. Hell, he could kick out like Finn Balor or Damian Priest out of the Judgment Day and just take over.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. And while we're at it, hey, you know what? Bring Rhea's man over there. Bring Buddy Matthews. I love Brody King. Love Julia Hart. Love Brody King. Realistically, though, I don't know if WWE would be interested in Brody King. I personally, I think he's fantastic. Yeah. I don't know if he's their cup of tea. But look, like you said, even if they just brought Aleister Black back and Buddy Murphy back, putting those two, plugging them right into a Judgment Day, that'd be fantastic. That'd be great.
I'll be honest, I wouldn't put Buddy in the Judgment Day, but like if he was hop back on the roster,
if they wanted to keep it from the House of Black, being that they play that role there initially, I don't know if you remember me mentioning this to you last year. I was not the biggest fan of Buddy Matthews joining the House of Black. I thought he stuck out like a sore thumb. I was like, he has an amazing look. I mean, regardless what you have him wearing or whatnot, he's
red hair. Is that what you're
great shape? I don't know if it was the red. The red was throwing me off with the whole dark theme. He fits great now. Initially, I wasn't the biggest fan too, but being that he has done a pretty good job with the House of Black and fit that group very well, his demeanor, that is why I would have him transfer over with Malachi, put him in Judgment Day if they were to go there.
He added that layer that he was missing of like having a brooding presence.
Scary mystique.
When he first joined, like he lacked that, but he got there.
Exactly. With time, from day one to like day 60, he was a completely different person and fit that role with House of Black. Great. And I think they've all done a great job. Even Julia Hart. Obviously, we both agree she needs some work in the ring. I think it's very evident, even though she's the TBS champion. But from a character standpoint, I really like how she's grown with them the past year and a half.
Right. Yeah, she's been doing really well, I would say, the last 3 months.
Yeah, specifically since becoming champion.
Yeah, and this whole angle with like Sky Blue, so should like the House of Black kind of breaks up or whatever in the future, she could kind of do her own thing with the women's scene.
All right, so next up here, Kev, match number 4, we had an 8-woman tag team matchup. The babyface team consisted of Willow Nightingale, former TBS champion Kris Statlander, Anna Jay, again, another former member of the Dark Order, and Thunder Rosa, the refreshed, rejuvenated Thunder Rosa. Great seeing her back. It's been the better part of a year and a half. We saw her a few weeks ago return with AEW on AEW Collision. Again, former world champ. That seemed to be the case for both teams here, Kev. We had a former world champ and a former TBS champion on the babyface side. And of course, as far as the heels were concerned, the Outcasts, Saraya being the former world champion on that side. Ruby Soho coming out with Saraya's latest sidekick, Harley Cameron, who's making moves on Ruby's man. I forget his name. He comes out with, 2.0, right? Matt Menard and Angelo Parker. Harley Cameron's been making moves on Angelo Parker. Ruby Soho, I don't know if she's found out yet. She's not going to be thrilled. So obviously Ruby is very soon to make her way out of this group and potentially even become a babyface, maybe. Also, Skye Blue and current TBS champion Julia Hart. Decent match. Again, one of those fun 8-person matches, tribute show. We didn't think too much of what's really going on here. Just enjoyed what we had to see here. Very similar finish, just like the men's 8-way match. This ended not only with the babyface team winning, but another former member of the Dark Order, much like Preston Vance, number 10, won that matchup for them. Anna Jay got the job done here. She made Skye Blue tap out to her Queen Slayer submission hold. Again, babyface is looking good on this show, Kev, 4-0 thus far at this point. I didn't really consider Anna Jay to be a babyface in the last year and a half. This is the first time I think she's even aligned with the babyfaces at all. If I don't know if I'm mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that's been the deal. You didn't stay last week for AEW Rampage after Dynamite went off air. We saw Hikaru Shida defeat Anna Jay, and Anna Jay was using typical heel tactics, but I guess for this type of a show, again, honoring Brody Lee, the Dark Order, etc., it made sense for Anna Jay to slot her in on this show with the babyface squad, getting the victory. Again, you could say the same about Preston Vance. The LFI, they've pretty much been tweeners lately. Initially they were definitely heels with Roosh and company, but again, two tweeners, heels, getting the wins on the babyface side of things. And what did you make of this match, this outcome? And we came to find out after this that another match scheduled for Battle of the Belts 9 this Saturday after Collision. Anna Jay will be going up against Julia Hart for that TBS championship.
Yeah, I'll say that this match, with Anna Jay took me by surprise, just because, as you were alluding to before, is this like a one-off, right? Or is this going to be like the start of something new? Is she now a quote-unquote babyface? That's why this episode, I didn't really care too much about it. It was just fun to watch. But if anything, maybe that was like the only really character growth. We got a change.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I like seeing her as a babyface. It's been a while. I like seeing her as a babyface. Thought she did a good job as a heel. I think she's a great heel. But I think it'd be a nice change of pace for her to be to run babyface for a little bit.
Just very sudden, just so sudden. There was like nothing building up to it, so that's kind of the strange thing. But who knows? Maybe we'll see her do some heel tactics.
Yeah.
Come that matchup. I thought it was a good showcase to see like who are the current women that we have on the roster, like, the two up and coming people, even though one of them is already a quote unquote champion, Julia Hart and Skye Blue. We've already seen like Willow. Willow's really good. It was one of those matches where it was like, okay,
it's just a fun match, a showcase.
Yeah, it was more like okay, I see what we're working with with the women's division, and where it goes, no one really knows, but fingers crossed. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of taste of like how the women's division will unfold come with that matchup that you mentioned.
This Saturday should be a good match. Yeah. Obviously, Julia Hart's going to retain. There's no doubt about that. If any title changes, maybe the tag. I definitely don't see Anna Jay winning. Nonetheless, should be a fun match. I'm going to ring off a good majority of this women's roster, Kev, before we go to match number 5 here. And another reason I'm hoping Mercedes Moné, formerly known as Sasha Banks, for those that don't know, if you've been under a rock the past year, another reason I hope she does end up in AEW is I really think, of course, she'll be women's champion at one point, and that'll be great. Hopefully she stays healthy and all that. But I truly do think she's going to better the division, not just from the standpoint of her wrestling and working matches and having great feuds with numerous opponents, but I also think that she could really get in there, much like Bryan Danielson backstage, and be like, look, TK, women need more segments. Would it kill you to give them 2 matches on AEW Dynamite every other week? This roster, Kev, I'm going to name some. You already know most. Timeless Toni Storm is the champion. Athena's the Ring of Honor World Champion. I mean, for God's sake, bring Athena to AEW. That's where she should be, not with the few women on Ring of Honor. It's been great. She's had a 14, 15-month reign. But come on, Julia Hart, TBS champion. And now they just signed the likes of Deonna Purrazzo, Hikaru Shida, 3-time champion, Jamie Hayter, Britt Baker, former champs, Kris Statlander, former TBS, Taya Valkyrie, Skye Blue, Willow Nightingale, Riho, a former champion, Diamante, Kiera Hogan, Red Velvet, Thunder Rosa, Serena Deeb, Ruby Soho, Saraya, former champ, Mercedes Martinez, former Ring of Honor Women's Champion, Again, Anna Jay, what is it? Ty Mello, of course, Nyla Rose, former champion as well. A lot of people forget that. Marina Shafir, even. Look, I know, the list goes from, bounces all around as far as talent's concerned. Marina Shafir, even Penelope Ford, Layla Gray, Madison Rain, who works backstage a lot, Emi Sakura, Billy Starks, Layla Hirsch, Mariah May, Abaddon. Kev, that's the majority of the AEW women's roster. A few of them are slated on the Ring of Honor, like Marina Shafir, Billy Starks, Layla Hirsch, Mercedes Martinez, and Athena. I think are the only 5 women actually on the Ring of Honor women's roster. That being said, you cannot tell me that the talent is not there. Obviously, it goes from big to small. Obviously, the list, everybody's at a different, stage of their careers or where they're at. Again, Athena, dude, and then I want to get your opinion on, not just the Athena part going to AEW, but with Mercedes coming to AEW potentially anytime now, any day now, do you think she would help in more ways than one as well? And, what do you think? How can TK truly expand this women's division? I mean, we know how, giving them more time, but how can he just not pluck out a few favorites and really give people consistent, opportunities? Because I look at it like this. All 4 of these women I'm about to mention were in NXT at some point, right? Let's go with Athena. She became the Ring of Honor Women's World Champion December 10th, 2022 at Ring of Honor Final Battle, defeating Mercedes Martinez, who reigned as champion for about 7 months after, ironically enough, defeating Deonna Purrazzo, the only time she was ever on AEW television, which was the May 4th edition. They main evented, by the way. That was huge. Now, here we are, Kev. 2 years ago today, January 10th, 2022, Deonna Purrazzo defeated Roxy, now known as Roxanne Perez, during the main event of Impact. This was Roxy's final match with Ring of Honor as champion, obviously. It was the main event of Impact. Great match. I remember like it was yesterday that I watched it. And so that was good. Now, here we go. Roxanne Perez, obviously, she's done a lot in NXT, former NXT Women's Champion, Tag Team Champion. She did both of those, by the way, before 2022 even ended. She debuted with the company April of 22. She did a lot in her own right. So Roxanne Perez, she obviously made the right decision. She'll be on the main roster any day now, probably after WrestleMania. So good for her. She's not in this conversation because the other 3 women are actually with this company. So Athena, former NXT Women's Champion in her own right, and Tag Champion with Shotzi Blackheart. Ring of Honor Champion for, again, almost 14 months. Deonna Purrazzo just inks it with AEW last week. And Mercedes Martinez, one of the few women on the Ring of Honor roster, on that women's roster there. Now, I don't lose as much sleep at night with Mercedes strictly being on Ring of Honor. Do I think she should also be showcased on AEW? Absolutely. But I know she's been in the game so long, they just look at her as one of the veterans that will probably at this point just put talent over and give them good quality matches. Where Athena is at right now, and again, it's not just Athena I want to harp on, but I think it's the blatantly obvious pick. It's Tony Khan having, as much as we like a Skye Blue or a Julia Hart and so many others that have, started with the company, and they're doing much better than they were 2 years ago, even a year ago.
Yeah.
It is a crime to not have talent like Athena on AEW. Even we were at the show last week, and look, after reviewing and watching the match over a couple of times, I may have been a little critical with the whole Mariah May match. It was better than I initially thought it was when I watched it there in person. But even that being said, you have Mariah on there, Skye Blue, again, Julia Hart, and that's all good and well, but there is no reason why Athena shouldn't be on TV. AEW TV at least once a week to that audience. Right. You have her on a Ring of Honor network only, subscriber only. How do you not have her on Dynamite or Collision or Rampage? And again, she's not the only one, but she is pretty much a victim in the sense of, here, you're Ring of Honor World Champion, great. You have 4 other women actually listed on the roster, and it's ever changing. It's like, okay, you do 2 months down there, you do 2 months down there. And dude, it's to the point where it's if they really want to make that AEW women's division a serious contender, which they have all the variables, with the exception of just a couple of, women they showcase regularly, just like a couple of years ago, Britt Baker. I mean, what are your thoughts on all this? I know I kind of went off track here, but I tried to tie it all in at the same time. Like, what am I missing, or what is TK? Yeah. How has nobody brought this to his attention? I mean, this is as bad as him on Twitter.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. She absolutely should be on the AEW roster, right? I by no means have a single solution that he should do. There's one trick that will solve all of his problems, for the women's roster. But if I could, I would say look at the women's division in WWE, right? The SmackDown roster, the Raw roster, the NXT roster. Look at those storylines, what's going on there. Hell, if he doesn't want to do that, look at the Knockouts division. Look at the storylines going on over there. Look at what's going on in, Stardom, right? The Joshi roster over there. Look at what's going on over there. Like maybe he could take influences from like whatever storylines that are playing out over there and kind of like play off of that and create his own storylines, because that's what, the women are suffering from. Like you said, the roster is, I don't want to say it's stacked in terms of talent, but in terms of like the amount of wrestlers, it's there, right?
It's there.
It feels like he's playing with, rather than what is it, a stack of cards of utilizing the 52 cards. He's only utilizing like 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, it's so true.
That would be the argument
every week, same ones.
So, and if he really wants to like help develop some of the people that maybe he feels that and I don't want, like I said, I don't want to offend anyone, but maybe he doesn't feel like they deserve to be on TV. Okay, like let's help them out, put them on ROH, because like ROH doesn't really have a women's roster, right? You said what? None. It's only like 5.
5, including your champion on the roster. I checked it out last night, dude. I couldn't believe it. I refreshed the page like 3 times. I said, "Where are the rest of them?" That's it.
I don't know. Like for the better part, put Athena on AEW, right? Maybe move half of the roster that you're not utilizing, put that on ROH, right? They can develop on ROH, and if the time needs, maybe they can come back to AEW, but keep them on ROH for the time being. Right. Help that product over there. With should Mercedes come in with AEW, I think that could be an amazing feud with Athena. A really, really good feud.
Without question.
And another thing that he needs to keep in mind, because he keeps signing a lot of talent, is that pay attention to the NXT women's roster, right? All of them can, and I hate to say this, not all of them will end up being put on the main roster. A lot of them will be let go for whatever reason, whether, the company believes in them or not, they decide to retire, whatever. They decide just to go a different route in life. Keep an eye on them. And I would say, you kind of bring that talent over, because I think there's a lot of good talent in that NXT roster that
I agree. NXT women's roster is strong.
That one's very stacked, right? That they have the in-ring capabilities. If need be, kind of scout them, and they could help out with from a story perspective. That's sure. What I think he should do, all those things, right? Pay attention to the women's scene internationally, everything. Scout the talent from the NXT, because like I said, not all of them are going to make it onto the main roster. They're not all going to be represented on SmackDown or Raw, sadly.
I think, Kev, I mean, we talk about AEW and storylines in general, right? Namely the men's, obviously the women's to a point. It's hard to give, certain women's storylines when they're not even being showcased. I think that's the first thing. With the men, we could be critical storylines, whatever. It's hard to be critical with the women in any respect as far as storylines if they're not even being showcased. And like you said, he brought up a great point. I agree. I've been watching them avidly the last couple of years, especially Impact, now TNA, right? Talk about making the most out of a women's division. And I don't say that to slight them at all, but I do say it from the simple point of Impact to a point, especially the women's division the last few years when I've been watching, it's been a bit of a revolving door. Chelsea Green, Mia Yim, when they got cut from WWE a couple of years ago, they went there for a little bit. They got re-signed, right? Taya Valkyrie returned there for a little bit. She goes to AEW. Trinity went there. She's been a great champion since Slammiversary July. She's set to be potentially dropping the Jordan Grace this weekend at Hard to Kill and potentially in the Royal Rumble back with WWE. Deonna Purrazzo had a great tenure there, multi-time champion, tag. I mean, she's in AEW. All that being said, they have a lot of great notable names. They can't seem to keep them, and I understand why, right? They work with what they got, their audience. But that being said, they always find story for all of them, even the people that aren't getting the wins, right? Was it Courtney Rush, or formerly known as Rosemary, and Jessica or Havoc? There are so many others. A great tag team, MK Ultra. I got them back here. Killer Kelly and Masha Slamovich. They're great current tag champs. Tasha Steele still with the company. She's doing her thing over there. I was really hoping we got that Tasha Steele's Trinity feud before Trinity leaves, but I don't think we're going to get that, unfortunately. but they make the most of every opportunity, and from a in-ring standpoint and a production value standpoint. Then here I look at Tony Khan. He's got double the roster,
Right.
tons of bank. And it's like, it's not even about the money at this point. It's about just simply
Right.
showcasing what you have. Putting more stock into the women's division is really what this is all about. And I think bringing in Mercedes, again,
Right.
as much as that's going to benefit them from a wrestling standpoint and a notoriety standpoint, that's going to make AEW mega bucks just having her there. I really think her input with that company backstage, namely for the women's division, is going to be great, and I really hope so, because they need a bigger platform. They have two companies and three shows with AEW and one with Ring of Honor. Like, how are they not getting? I don't want to hear about Ring of Honor had 5 or 7 matches for the women there. They don't even have 7 women on the roster. Put it on
Right.
AEW. Simply put, I'll leave it at that. Athena deserves better. So do a few of the other women, quite frankly. But we could go on for days about that, just voicing my frustrations. Great to see the likes of Thunder Rosa back. Another locker room leader, in my opinion. I know she doesn't get along with many back there, or they don't get along with her, Britt and company. That's a whole other story for another day. But again, I hope the best for the women's division, because they certainly have the talent.
Mm.
That's,
Yeah.
that's where I stand with that. But let's hop over the match number 5 here. It's hard to come down from that just to go to
Yeah.
yeah, it's nothing against these guys here. The bounty hunter, Bryan Keith. We've seen him a lot on AEW lately. He was even there at the New Jersey show last week, going up against the
Yeah.
Undisputed Kingdoms, Roderick Strong. Of course, he was out there with the whole group. This was the first heel victory we got of the night here. Roderick Strong got the win. This was followed by an Adam Cole promo. Simply put, Cole calls the Kingdom, being Matt Taven and Mike Bennett, the greatest Ring of Honor tag team champions of all time. Roddy, he says, is a future AEW International Champion. Similar sentiments he said last week when we were at the show. He goes on to say, Wardlow, future AEW World Champion. That's when the time is right. Now, of course, last week he said that, when he's back, when Adam Cole is back, that Wardlow would forfeit his AEW World Championship, handing it over to Cole, much like a similar situation like Luchasaurus, now known as Killswitch, handing over that TNT Championship, letting Christian Cage walk around with it. So that's interesting, teasing some, tension there. I think it's easy to see that when Kyle O'Reilly returns, he'll probably be replacing Wardlow. Will they turn on him? Will Wardlow try to leave? We'll see what happens. He was the only one not wearing Undisputed Era gear. Did you notice that? He was wearing a shirt that said Wolves on it, or a hoodie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wardlow. So I don't
Yeah.
know what that's about. I don't know if his demeanor on his face is just because he's a heel now. He looked a little disinterested. I don't know if that's because of since what Cole said last week or what, but I thought it was kind of early to tease tension in the group. They've been
Right.
together for less than 2 weeks, so I'm not crazy about that. Otherwise, I think I'm okay with the group. I think it's pretty cool. Cole leading another heel faction yet again. What were your thoughts? Not so much on the match, but the promo afterwards, and potentially what's going to happen with Wardlow and Cole. I think we know what's going to happen. And do you see O'Reilly joining the fray?
Yeah, I definitely see that whole scenario playing out the way that you are, kind of just mentioning it. And now that I'm thinking about it, right here in this moment, I feel like it kind of is a parallel to maybe the storyline that we got to know a few years ago, where it was MJF faking his way into, the inner circle and eventually turning and leaving.
That's right.
And it would just be Wardlow in this case mirroring this with the Undisputed Kingdom.
Makes sense.
And should that feud continue in the future, that they could kind of play off of that. They're like, hey, they kind of went down the same path of like, I had to do this, I had to fake my way into group to finally gain like championship status.
That makes sense, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Wardlow bouncing back to being a babyface sooner than later, because I think that's going to greatly benefit him. You plug O'Reilly into that perfect heel character. O'Reilly just looks like a heel. I never enjoyed him as a babyface NXT,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's really only where I followed him. I didn't follow
It's
much
the
of his
red
career
hair
prior
again,
to.
man. What do you got
It's
against
that
the red
red. Hey, look, man, I like Sheamus. I mean, look, I like Becky. That being said, though, very interesting. Interested to see what happens with that in the coming months. I guess it really depends when Adam Cole's back, realistically, right? And all that. But here we have backstage, Deonna Purrazzo with Renee Paquette. Brief interview interrupted by Red Velvet. Long story short, they'll both be making their AEW Collision debut, I believe, this Saturday, in what seems to be a match with one another. I think, sadly, this is going to be a semi-squash. Deanna Purrazzo will get the victory. And this is what I'm talking about, Kev. I know certain people have to lose. That's just the way pro wrestling works.
Yeah.
Red Velvet, though, not being back for more than 2 months after a grueling knee injury, being out the better part of 2023. More losses than wins, most likely. I know she got a win over Ruby Soho in the last month. I think, all due respect, I love Ruby, but it's either Red Velvet or Ruby Soho that is always seemingly taking a loss every time I turn around. Two women I actually really like and cheer for quite often. Was hoping for some gold for them the last couple of years. Anyway, that being said, I know people got to take losses. Someone has to lose. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. But I hate to see it be people that are making comebacks, returns, especially from injuries that could have been career threatening. So what are your thoughts on this? Simply put, again, Deanna's first match with the company too. We know she's winning. It's going to be a good match. We know that. That's not the point. I hate to see Red Velvet, Kiera Hogan. The only time we see them on AEW TV seemingly is in a loss. Otherwise, Ring of Honor.
Right. It sucks because, like you said, those are people, who we can see, like eventually rising up the ranks of the company. But it sucks to just see them eating loss after loss after loss. It doesn't
No
do
direction
for them.
No direction.
No direction
Yeah.
whatsoever. That might be a bad name.
That's going to be their new faction. No direction. Yeah. It's going to be 3 people. It's going to be Red Velvet, Kiera Hogan, and Ruby Soho. We are no direction. Yeah. It's terrible. I hate it because I love all 3 of them, but there's no promise for them as far as, at least, never mind gold, but as far as a winning streak is concerned.
Right. They can't even get 2 matches under their belt.
No, not 2 consecutive. Not 2 consecutive. They might all win 1 here and there. For every 1 they win, they're taking 4 or 5 losses, Kev. And again, people got to lose. I get that. But there's a lot of other people in that company that should be taking these left and right losses other than them. I'm not going to name names, but I think we know. So we'll just leave it at that. But frustrations in the women's division. Again, we're hoping Mercedes could come in and save the day, not just by being champion, but hopefully she rights some wrongs in that company and tells TK to wake the hell up. Right. Maybe he needs one of those new Woo energy drinks from Ric Flair. I don't know.
I'm wondering what kind of influence she could have from a backstage role. Obviously, I don't think she's going to be a writer or a producer, but and I hate to say this, maybe she could have a somewhat influence the way Punk did, but with the women's division.
I'm hoping so, dude. I'm hoping so. I don't need anything overbearing, but I think, hey, look, she's formerly the boss. Now she refers to herself as the CEO, and hopefully she, really has some input, is in a couple of meetings. Not to be overbearing or I'm a superstar, let me in. Right. But let me help this division, just like she tried to help with WWE and the women's tag division, bring those belts back since the first time in decades, stuff like that. I really think she can help, with it somewhat of a revolution. But God, even when they sign the talent, it's hard to get excited because men's and women's, but namely here the women's, it's hard to get excited because they just lack direction. Story is inevitable too. But if you don't have direction, then we're certainly not going to get a story, Yeah. So that's that, bro. Main event time here, though. Speaking of the Nature Boy, he made his way out. And then we saw Sting, the Icon Sting, and Darby Allin in a no DQ match going up against the Don Callis family's Powerhouse Hobbs and Konosuke Takeshita. Second consecutive week here, Kev. We see Takeshita versus Darby Allin in some capacity last week. That was a brutal match that we saw there in person. My goodness. Where Takeshita, I believe, got the victory. Yeah. Anyway, this time around, this match ended pretty crazy. Typical Darby fashion. Coffin drop from the top of the crowd by the Trons over there by the stage. Then we see a Scorpion Death Drop off the stage through a table by Sting, obviously, to Powerhouse Hobbs, getting the victory. And this was his pretty much last hurrah as far as Daly's place is concerned, being that he's retiring in a little less than 2 months. Again, Revolution, March 3rd. Keeps doing spots like this, Kev. I don't know. He may not be making it to Revolution. He's done many a crazy spot in AEW. I'll give him that. But I think it's time to calm down a little bit. Just relax. Anyway, the way this ended up, and it's funny because I jotted in my notes. I was like, I want to bring to Kev's attention who could potentially be his opponent at Revolution. I kid you not, dude. I wrote this down immediately following this match. I was like, let's get this conversation going. Again, we're just about a month and a half away. I was like, will it be a singles match? Will it be a tag match? We got that answer. We'll go to that in a minute. Will Sting give that match to Darby, being that him and Darby have teamed the last 3 years? It's been a lot of fun. I think he's enjoyed mentoring him. I'm sure Darby's enjoyed having Sting as his freaking mentor. through the pandemic era and such. So Tony Schiavone gets in the ring. He asks Sting, who will your opponent be at Revolution? I said, okay, well, we're going to get an answer here. This should be interesting. And just when it looked like Sting was going to tell us, who it may be, a certain tag team's music hits. We haven't seen them since Full Gear, since their loss to, I believe it was Kenny Omega and Jericho, where they lost their tag team title contendership to Jericho and Omega. And that being said, we saw Nick and Matt Jackson, the Young Bucks. They looked spiffy. They got their. I'm not crazy about their look. I gotta say, Kev, they've had many looks. I've liked their bearded look, and when they dye their hair and all this other stuff, and even clean shaven wasn't bad back in the day. But I'm not crazy about this mustache only look that they were both having. Very serious, obviously coming out as heels with babyface music. Yeah. It is what it is. They look a little snooty, so. Looks like we got our answer here. It's going to be Sting and Darby versus the Young Bucks at Revolution. So it's going to be a tag match. Caught me by surprise. What do you think about this being Sting's final opponent with Darby? Obviously in a tag match. We understand why Sting isn't doing singles. He's mid to late 60s or whatever. I get it. And B, what do you think of this new look Young Bucks?
Yeah.
Don't hold back. Be honest.
So I will say that, to be honest, I was hoping for a singles match, but it makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
He's a lot older, so the gas tank isn't there.
That is.
So with the gas tank not being there, the logical sense is to, do a multi-man type of match, which includes the tag match itself, 2-on-2.
Sure.
Yeah. Once, the Young Bucks walked out, I did like how they had the yin and yang, the white and black, and they had the pencil thin mustaches. I know what you hate because you don't have a mustache.
yeah, never been a fan of mustaches, really. Yeah. I did it a few times.
I'm learning a lot about you today. You hate redheads, you hate mustaches.
That is all right. That's very untrue. I love.
How do you feel about Yosemite Sam?
Look, people, for the record, I love redheads.
Right.
Not in a weird way. I love them, but mustaches. I don't like a mustache on me unless I'm like cosplaying Roman Reigns. I usually don't do the whole mustache bit.
For those listening, I'm just busting his chops.
No, of course they know.
But like you said, it had this presence of kind of like a snootiness, and maybe that's obviously what they're going for.
Yeah,
just because. And I was kind of surprised that we did get some cheers, just because the last time we saw them, they were being booed for whatever reason, And I think they were trying to, instigate that with like having this smug look on their face, not even saying anything, automatically being, said challengers, and they didn't get a boo. It didn't work this time just because this whole homecoming episode was kind of a little bit of a,
good vibes feel. It was a reunion of sorts.
Yeah,
it was, it's like a fun show, a home-based crowd. We weren't going to get a lot of obnoxious people.
It was this own thing. So like maybe by next week we'll see people kind of booing the
true colors, real reactions. But I had read earlier Wednesday that the Young Bucks were backstage. I said this is interesting. I'm sure we're going to see them at some point. Obviously, they didn't come out to wrestle. Came out to answer Sting and Darby at the end of the show. I was thinking maybe we were going to see them reunite with Hangman Adam Page. When he went in the ring, going up face to face with Joe, I did think, I thought the Mogul Embassy were going to attack Adam Page. Obviously, they were the ones who got those titles back from them, right? And I said maybe Nick and Matt are going to turn back babyface and rejoin with Hangman, but obviously that was not the case. So that's what we got. How do I personally feel about it? I'm indifferent. I did care who Sting was facing, but I don't really care. That's the Young Bucks. It's great. And I also understand why he's in a tag match opposed to a singles match in his mid-60s. His final match, he wants to go out with Darby, the same guy he started his run with in early 2021, 3 years to the pay-per-view, Revolution 2021, in the cinematic match against Team Taz, right? It was Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks, I believe they fought. So I get it. And I'm sure it will be good. And we'll leave it at that, right?
I'll just add two things to that. Is that I'm wondering whose decision that was. If that was, Sting's decision to work with the Young Bucks because he feels comfortable with how they work, or was that like an upper management decision? And to that, when you threw out, the name Hangman, I'll be honest. For me, as much as I love the Elite and have my, my biases or whatever to them, I want them to kind of all stay away from each other. The Young Bucks do their own thing.
Oh yeah, I'm
Hangman
good
does
with
his
that.
own
I
thing,
agree.
and
I agree.
Omega does his own thing. I don't need to see them kind of come back again and be friends or whatever.
Well, I
No,
think we spoke
from a
about
story
this.
perspective, I don't need that.
I think we spoke about this last spring, right? One of the last times we probably got on here to chop it up. We were talking about when Kenny Omega was making this run with the Bucks. Obviously, at that point in time, I don't think Hangman had rejoined them. I don't think he had reunited with them just yet. It was around that time he rejoined the Elite.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we were like, once they're done with this whole trio spit, we want to see Omega in singles and the Young Bucks in the tag division where they belong, right? Let the other teams get out there and do their thing in trios and such. So, no, I agree. I thought, they were going to answer and help Hangman, but look, I am quite all right with Hangman with this new momentum of sorts that he's gotten the last few months since feuding with Swerve, going to do his thing, getting a world title picture, the world title hunt, at least a match with Joe at some point, which should be good. You would think though, if Hangman does get an opportunity against Joe, that he would have to beat Swerve at least once in this feud. I mean, how could he lose to Swerve 3 consecutive times and vie for an opportunity ahead of Swerve? I don't see that happening. So I would be led to believe that I don't want to see Swerve take a loss, but I would say that since the first 2 meetings, Swerve got the victory. If we are going to see Swerve versus Hangman 3 at Revolution, I'm pretty sure we'd be led to believe that Hangman is going to get this win, right? Do you think that happens if we get that match for that show? Or do you see him losing 3?
Oh man, I think if he were to win, it might be through like a heel tactic.
Hangman.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting because Swerve's kind of a tweener, leaning more towards heel,
Yeah.
obviously, with his faction. Crowd loves him. Joe being a heel and
It,
Hangman, all 3 heels.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be something where he uses a weapon or something. It could be as easily as pulling the tights, holding the
Okay.
tights, or feet on the rope, something like that.
Kind of like how Ricky Starks, well, I guess it led to him being a full blown heel. Ricky
Yeah.
Starks rolled up Punk in that Owen Hart Foundation final, and that was the beginning of Ricky Starks' heel run, kind of. This since the summertime, back in early July when he pinned Punk, grabbed the tights, and got that victory.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have it, folks. That's pretty much our review of AEW Dynamite Homecoming, Jacksonville, Florida, Daly's Place. Again, took place Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. And it was a fun show. There wasn't a ton of story going forward. That was more so the show we were at the week prior. But obviously, we have plenty of time until Revolution. Again, a whole month and a half and change to get momentum for all those matchups and storylines and such.
Yeah, it should be good. Like we said before when we started the episode, fingers crossed that this upcoming year marks a new beginning for AEW.
Absolutely. 2-part question. A, is Mercedes Moné going to become all elite? And B, if so, when?
Great questions. I do want to say that she will end up being in AEW. We had that moment in time where we are like, oh, she's gonna go back to WWE, but
it sure looked like it. They were trying to work it out.
And as for when she should debut, I mean, if she's 100% health right now, to be honest, it wouldn't bother me if she were to debut in any of these upcoming arenas. I don't know if they plan on going back to Boston anytime soon within the next month prior to Revolution. If not, I feel like waiting till Revolution is just a little bit too long for me.
So I do think we're going to see Mercedes Moné show up in AEW. I think it's going to be before month's end. And if I were to say when, I would probably do it a few days before the Royal Rumble. Because the main reason I would do that, Kev, is I don't want to debut her after the Royal Rumble because it's pretty much going to look like the inevitable. Okay, Mercedes was not in the Royal Rumble. We're on the road to WrestleMania here for the WWE fans, and we know she is not going to be part of this journey to Philadelphia in April, and she's not going to be part of this company in the foreseeable future. You have her show up on the Dynamite, I believe, right around her birthday. I think her birthday is the 23rd of this month or something like that.
Okay.
I think that's a Tuesday. Let's just say the 24th. I think that's a Wednesday. So it's not next week's episode. I'd have her on the week after that, just a few days before the Royal Rumble. And you have her show up there. At what time in the show? We'll see. I guess that depends when the women get their opportunity. The women might not get a match that night because Mercedes shows up based on TK booking. No, honestly, I hope they get a match too. But anyway, regardless when she shows up, you have her show up then. few days before the Rumble, all bets are off. She ain't in the Rumble. She's not with WWE. She is all elite. And that's how you kind of make a statement a few days before the Rumble. Obviously, it's not to take any shine away from WWE, but if you wait to debut her after the Royal Rumble, it takes a lot of that mystique away because the Rumble took place. She was not one of the 30 participants. It looks like she's not going to be part of this Damage Control feud, siding with Bayley, getting her out of there, and whatever dreams people had of her having opportunities going into WrestleMania 40. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that, debuting her a few days before the Royal Rumble?
No, I think that works out perfectly, right? You get rid of all the suspicion of like, is she actually going to go back to WWE? Were they fake conversations of like that the contracts are, the contract talks were all bad or whatever.
Right.
Didn't work out.
CM Punk showed up. Everybody thought hope was lost there, and CM Punk surprised everybody. So
right.
everybody's saying similar situation.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if they want to play that card again within a few months.
Yeah.
Right. You can only do that so many times before people are onto it, and they're just like, nah.
No, of course, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that also gives her time to work out a proper storyline for Revolution.
Okay.
Right. So I mean, if you wait until a week before Revolution or 2 weeks, whatever,
it's too late. I don't want to say too late. We'll gladly take Mercedes at AEW at any point in time, but I think right now, I mean, why not? If she's, like you said, if she's readily available, if she's healthy, she got the green light, she's getting paid. If she's signed, if the ink is dry, even if it's not dry, if she signed that contract, why wait? I mean, obviously, you got to make things make sense. I get that, but especially, again, it's not to take away from WWE and the Royal Rumble. More so, AEW has to worry about their business. TK has to worry about AEW. Showcase her 72 hours before the Rumble. All that speculation dies. She's not showing up in that company. She is here, and let's go.
Right. Because as we've said before in many conversations, on screen, off screen, is that one of the biggest flaws for AEW has been waiting too long to pull the trigger. Right.
Correct. This is one of those times where, look, you got to strike while the iron's hot. And, what people make of it, fans or not. I mean, I just think it's the right decision for AEW. That's all I'm looking at. Obviously, I'm looking at the timing of the Rumble, too, obviously. But as far as the suspense and the excitement, I think it's the way to go. That's what I would do. But we both believe she's signing.
Yeah, and we can always look back on it. For instance, I'll give you the example of a Christian, right? Did he sign at Revolution, right? Is that when he debuted?
He did, yeah. Right? I want to say it was it 20? It was 21, right? 21 or 22? I think it was 21.
21. Yeah. Even though that happened and everything, we heard that, there was a big star or whatever. When it all happened in the moment, I don't think a lot of people cared. Like once he finally debuted, whatever, at that was it was a Sunday, right? Sunday night.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I think they were just running Sundays.
I think maybe a lot of people were let down or whatever. And you kind of look at it now where you're like, wow, that debut mattered a lot because of his storytelling. Since then, it worst case scenario, maybe, if Monet doesn't have the greatest debut or whatever, if she helps the division from, a storytelling perspective, the debut may not weigh that much,
Yeah, I mean, I think she's gonna across the board. It's gonna click. I think with her there with the company, it's immediate. It's an immediate win. Just having her part of your roster, literally her profile showing up on AEW's website.
Yeah.
She's gonna have inevitably great matches. Again, like we discussed many times earlier in this podcast. Hopefully, she helps the division as a whole and really gets back there and says, "Hey, look." She doesn't need to get to booking matches, but look, this person, a la an Athena and women like that, of that caliber of talent, need to be on your weekly shows, Dynamite Collision. What are we doing here? It's nice and it's all well and good that she's been Ring of Honor Women's Champion for 14, 15 months, but let's call it what it is. She's not being seen by a large audience at all, and she is. I think it's fair to say Athena's in her prime, right?
Yeah, yes.
As a talent, regardless, I don't even know her age off bat, but she's having some of the best matches of her life with the opportunity she's given. And that's just Ring of Honor. So you bring her to AEW and she could really light it up with some of these women. And again, Mercedes is just a win all around. So that being said, Kev, before I wrap up here, I'm going to tell you mine, but ones to watch in AEW. I want you to give me, it doesn't necessarily have to be a singles competitor, but ones to watch. Could be a tag team, men and women. All right. Men and women across the board in AEW. I'll give you some time. I'll give you mine. Now, look, they could be people that have been underutilized, that just signed with the company, people that have been spotlighted, but you think you see even more for them in the coming years. So ones to watch. I'm going to go with current Ring of Honor television champion, one half of Aussie Open, and now part of the Don Callis family, Kyle Fletcher. I think he's fantastic. We've seen what he's done in tag. Now, as of recent, we've seen what he's done in singles. Obviously, already TV champion. Obviously, Tony Khan sees something in him as well, being showcased on both AEW and Ring of Honor TV. Again, if I had $1 for every time I said the word Athena, Kev, I'd probably have about $200 right now stacked up right here next to me. Athena is pretty much the only Ring of Honor champion that is not being brought over to AEW too. Even you saw it when Samoa Joe was TV champ. They bounced from Ring of Honor to AEW. You've seen it with everybody. Eddie Kingston, right?
Yeah.
The Mogul Embassy, Gates of Agony, and Brian Cage, Wheeler Yuta, pure champion, even when Shibata was champion. So look, the list goes on for days. I don't get it. But anyway, I'm going with Kyle Fletcher. And if we're going to talk about women here, I'm very curious to see how she is booked. And obviously, we think she's going to get a winning start this Saturday on Collision. I'm very curious ones to watch. We know she's great. How is she going to fare in AEW? Deonna Purrazzo. I'm very excited to see Kyle Fletcher and Deonna Purrazzo. Those are two that I know are going to excel and succeed in AEW. And it's going to be interesting. Some new matchups. I watched her very closely, again, the last couple of years on Impact. Was glad to see Trinity join the fray. It was new matches for Deonna, right? How many times has she fought Jordan Grace and all these other women on the roster, Giselle Shaw and so on? And so it was good. It was a breath of fresh air. And now she has so many matches and matchups that she's never had. And I'm sure she thought the same. So those are my two. What do you got?
All right. Based off of, just seeing her the other day in a matchup, I'm going to actually say from my in-ring ability, I want to see more from Kiera Hogan. I really liked what I saw. I was just
I bet you did, you son of a gun.
I was just like, all right, if they can build up her character,
Oh, I agree. She could really be something, man, on either brand.
Ring of Honor, and you threw out the name already of like an Athena. I would love to see maybe like a triple threat match with her involved and Monet. So, and then for the men's,
it could be a tag team. There's no pressure. It doesn't need to be singles. I know that it's a lot to choose from.
The one name that stuck out to me of someone who can kind of do multiple roles, whether it's a serious or even a comedy role.
Okay.
Is going to be a Dalton Castle. I would love
to see. All right, yeah,
he
can do both. Comedic.
I would love to
he's
see
been pretty bummed out, I've seen on Ring of Honor.
I would love to see him be heavily pushed this year. Give him a secondary belt. Hell, make him the trios champion with the boys. Do something with him.
Okay.
Utilize him. I would really love to see him be heavily pushed this year.
Very interesting. So two people that are, I don't know if Kiera Hogan is officially listed on Ring of Honor, but let's be honest. She showcased a lot more on Ring of Honor these days than AEW. You see her on Collision once, every 5-6 weeks. So two people essentially that you picked from Ring of Honor side of things. And I guess technically one kind of from mine, he holds one of the Ring of Honor TV titles, or the TV title rather, and Kyle Fletcher. Now I know TK announced last month there's going to be a Ring of Honor women's TV title, right? That's going to be their mid-card title over there, I guess. Did they crown a champion for that yet? I know you haven't really kept an eye on it as far as watching it live on Thursdays, because I usually watch TNA or Impact.
Right.
Have you heard anything about that? Have they crowned anybody yet as far as that's concerned?
I haven't heard any news, to be honest.
Okay. Well, it's slim pickings. I mean, again, the roster page is a few women. So they could do rock, paper, scissors, shoot, and, narrow it down real quick to who's going to be in the championship match. I mean, or just have a fatal four-way. I mean, that's the only way you could determine it, right? You have no women on the roster. The few you have are talented. Anyway, Kev, we're done here. That again, Dynamite review and a little bit added extra. I was trying to think. I've been thinking about this for quite some time, especially when I watch NXT. I know the very first woman that was signed again to AEW when they did their rally 5 years ago, Britt Baker, right? January 2019. Shortly thereafter, we had Bea Priestley, now known as Blair Davenport, on NXT, doing a fantastic job, actually. She won the Iron Survivor women's matchup back at Deadline just a month ago for a title opportunity, which she wasn't able to successfully win, but nonetheless, she's been spotlighted. Outside of Bea Priestley and Jade Cargill, have there been any other women that left AEW and went to WWE?
I'll be honest, you caught me off guard. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, that's all right. That's fine. I was just wondering, honestly. It had been in the back of my mind for a while now, and I was like, if anybody knows, Kev would know if anybody had left the company and joined WWE. But all right, I mean, there's been many women that have either been let go or not re-signed or decided to leave AEW that have went with other promotions, big or small. But I was wondering if any, namely other than those two, had made their way over to WWE. Well, Kev, thank you for joining me today. Appreciate you. Great having you back, man. It's been far too long. And thank you for joining me on this AEW Dynamite review. Hope to see you down the road soon. Maybe we'll even do Collision one day, switch it up.
Right. Absolutely. It's always a great time talking about wrestling. We can never get enough of it. It's in our blood. It's our DNA that, it's part of our just overall routine. It's just watching wrestling, consuming it, thinking about what could be, what has happened and everything.
Eat, sleep, breathe it, right? That's it, man. That's us wrestling fans to the very end.
If that's not on a t-shirt already, it should be, eat, sleep, watch wrestling.
Yeah, pretty much. That's us in a nutshell, brother. But again, thank you for joining me. And everybody out there, thank you for tuning in once again to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen. That is the associate Kev. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's pretty, even though he didn't answer that last one for me. So, but we will not deduct any points on that one. We caught him off guard. But again, thanks for being here on the show, Kev. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you for everybody out there listening to this long-winded review of AEW Dynamite. That's just how we do. Kev, we tend to go off topic from time to time, but that's just how it goes, right? It's all part of the show. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.